Hello, Brad.
Oh, hello, Jordan.
Mental Men. We're
Welcome to Mental Men. Yes.
welcome. We're talking about addictions today and addictions getting the best of us.
And
So,
you mentioned that you recently went to AA again,
yeah, I
and you
went
wanted to
yesterday.
talk about it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it was an interesting time. There was this guy who kind of like leads everything. And sometimes he'll just like select people to tell their stories. You can choose if you want to tell your story, or some people they just want to listen. So I was in a storytelling mood, and I told my story of being sober for 990 days and kind of relapsing in November. And I felt like from the past meetings I went to, it's kind of like I feel like you're like James Bond almost, in the sense that like you go out into the world and you're like doing your kind of mission, and AA is like the headquarters. You're coming back to report what you're finding.
Okay.
And people like that analogy in the meeting. So I talked about just my struggles coming back home, and how everything is just so different. And a lot of people kind of connected with that. So afterwards, there was this one guy who had been going for decades. Some people, they've been there 40 years and they still go every week.
Yeah.
And he really connected with my story. He really felt like when I got to 990 days and then relapse, he like really felt that. He was just like, oh, 10 more days.
Yeah.
Like, you're so close. And he's super supportive. And he gave me his business card. And he said he never done that with anyone, and he's been going for decades. And he really felt like he believed in me somehow.
Yeah.
And he bought me this book yesterday. It's a daily reflection. It's like, this is a book of reflections by AA members for AA members.
Oh, okay.
So it's basically like every day you read like a new kind of like affirmation type thing.
Okay.
And he had told me he's done this with a few other people, but he said, look up your birthday and then see if it speaks to you somehow.
Okay.
So I was just like, okay, like I felt this overwhelming kindness from him that he would do that.
Yeah.
This book was $18, so he handed the guy $20 and just like bought it for me right there. He talked to me about his family, and he's I don't want to say his occupation, but it's on construction.
Okay.
And it's about foundations, digging your own foundation. And you don't want to build your foundation like on a awkward kind of line, right?
Yeah.
So you want from the beginning to build from something deep and
You
strong,
need that
right?
soil compression a good like 95%, definitely.
Yeah. And so I'm at a stoplight. I'm about to pick up Jess, and I just quickly searched May 22nd. Right?
Okay.
So I'm reading it, and I'm like, it was as if I had written it almost.
Okay.
Because I think I mentioned it on an earlier episode that when I got sober, I went from me to we. Like something clicked. Like it was all about me, like selfish, to
Yeah.
like we, community. So I want to just quickly read it. It's very short. It's a little spiritual, like
Yeah.
like the God stuff isn't for me necessarily, like but okay. So when I was drinking, all I could ever think about was I, or me, me. Such painful obsession of self, such soul sickness, such spiritual selfishness bound me to the bottle for more than half my life. The journey to find God and to do his will one day at a time began with the first word of the first step, we. There was power in numbers. There was strength in numbers. There was safety in numbers. And for an alcoholic like me, there was life in numbers. If I had tried to recover alone, probably would have died. With God and another alcoholic, I have a divine purpose in life. I have become a channel for God's healing love. So it ends a bit too much for me. But there was some parts of like I, me, me. And then there's life in numbers. So for me, I feel like I was quite arrogant in like when I first got sober. I thought I could do this all alone. But actually I need a community. So that's kind of like what I'm finding right now.
You did do 990 days alone, though.
I did. But for some guys who are like there 30, 40 years, they all say like, you can't do it alone.
Yeah.
It's like almost impossible. It's like you need those stories.
Yeah.
And just hearing some of those stories, they're pretty like shocking to hear some, like way worse than what I went through.
Yeah.
And then you get a lot of like men my age who it seems like there's more and more from last time, like more, and they're very smart, like the way that they tell their story and stuff is like they're very open and they know that they have a problem. And a lot of them are like very introverted. They're like quiet. And so I'm like that, I'm like very, shy and, but the way that they tell their story so openly, it's like kind of like what I'm there for.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's helping me a lot. And I don't know, what are some things you're going through lately?
Lately, one of my biggest things is like, because I used drinking as like a tool all the time, as like a escape, I guess.
Yeah.
As, anytime I get like anxious or anytime I get really upset, my first thought is like, I need beer. And sometimes I do get one, like a non-alcoholic one.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it's the action of it.
Yeah.
Like you just feel better for some reason. It's like a placebo effect. It's like, oh, that's not actually, it's so strange too, because alcohol, a lot of times it just makes you feel like shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's like, how is this something you want?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was thinking about it a lot recently. I don't know why. And you think about, the stages of drinking all this, you have your first one, you're like, oh, it's so good. So another one, that kind of thing.
That's what they talk about in AA. It's like the first one is like the best one, right?
Yeah.
And then it's just like...
Yeah. And then I think what you're kind of chasing is like the buzzed feeling, because that's like the best part before you're like drunk.
Yeah.
And yeah, I hate that feeling.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I don't know why, just when random memories pop in your head. And I was driving the other day and it popped in my head this one time. I went out with two of our friends, Chris and Kevin, and I think others were there earlier. But it came to the point that I like couldn't talk without like slurring my words.
Yeah.
And I was conscious of it and I was like, I don't want to speak anymore.
Yeah.
Like this is horrible.
Yeah.
And I ended up just taking an Uber home at that point. But it was just like, this is gross.
Yeah.
Actually.
So did you use it more like to escape from your problem instead of dealing with it, or?
Yeah, I think at first it might have been an escape, and then after that it was a tool. It was like, I feel like this, so now I'm gonna have this, and it's gonna make me feel better.
Yeah.
Even though most of the time it didn't.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's the trap, right?
Yeah,
It's just
exactly.
like, yeah, I'll feel better after that, but you never think about the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you feel like some of that, or were you kind of like when you were like fully in it, like you said, you drink like a bottle of whiskey or whatever?
Yeah.
Were you like, I can't wait to get to that bottle, or was it just?
Yeah, that was right after my divorce that I had like a bottle of whiskey every night, basically.
Oh yeah.
And I would ride my bike to work. So I would wake up like hungover as shit, right? And then I would ride my bike to work and sweat it all out. So I would feel like 60-70% better by
Yeah.
the time I got to work. But then it's like by midday you're just like, oh my God, I need like a nap, right? So I would often just quickly get like a fast meal and then just lock my office door and just sleep on the ground for like 30 minutes, even just closing my eyes. Maybe I didn't sleep, but just closing my eyes and just like disappearing from my problems and the world was kind of like the feeling I was looking for.
Yeah.
It was like, because it's down to that voice in your mind sometimes. That's just like that incessant chattering. The Buddhists call it the monkey. That's just like always going, right?
That's so funny. Just sorry to interrupt you, but just
No.
like how like the Buddhists call that, and it's just like it just shows you that it's like through every culture,
Yeah,
everybody has it.
everyone has
Yeah.
it. Yeah. And for me, like sometimes in my Buddhist practice, I realized that actually you can't really control your thoughts. Like they just kind of come into your mind, and you're just like a medium almost. And a lot of us, we want to ascribe those words, those ideas that come to us as ours. We kind of like label them. That's where our identity comes from, right?
Okay.
Instead of just kind of like sitting back, that's like the form of meditation, where it's like you're seeing the words separately from
Yeah.
yourself, and they're not like you. They're
Yeah.
just part of you. And you're just like clinging to it. You're like grasping it as if it's the real you, right?
That's like how, they used to say, if you're really mad about something, like write a letter
Yeah.
and then sleep on it. And then the next day, if you're still mad about it, send the letter.
Do you ever do that?
No, I remember one time, this is so stupid.
Yeah.
We went to a pub. I can't remember the name of it. We went there all the time for Name That Tune. Yeah, Jokers.
I forgot about that.
And we were doing some game where we all got up and some guy stole all our jackets for some reason.
Yeah.
And he was sitting on them, and then anyways, we found them, and we were like 18, and we weren't looking for a fight or anything, so just took the jackets and left, and then ranted on the way home. And I was so mad. I went and I wrote down on what a piece of shit this guy is. And then it's funny because then later, I can't remember, I was cleaning out my room one time or something. I found this and I was just like, holy shit, I was really angry. Woof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank God no one heard that. Right?
Yeah, exactly. But it's like these things you get so, especially now because it's so much communications through email and text and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So then you don't know tone. And some people are so direct, or I don't know what the proper word is, with their emails. There's no regards or thank you or hi Brad. Instead it's just right to the bottom of the email. It's just you need to do it this way.
Yeah.
And you're like, what a motherfucker. But then you think for a second, you're like, okay, I don't know. Maybe they're not mad. This is just how they talk. If we were talking on the phone, it'd be a totally different thing. So let it go.
Yeah, I feel like they also in this book talk about everyone has a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type thing. So there's a part of you that's the conscious you that it knows what's right. It knows what you should do. and then there's the Hyde, right? That comes out and says like "fuck you," like
Yeah.
I'm just gonna tear everything and destroy yourself and destroy you. And I think there was a part of me that was like that, to like that I almost wanted to kill myself, but I didn't want to pull the trigger. And that was like I was using alcohol as a way to pull the trigger, except it didn't kill me, right? I'm here, luckily, because of it. But
Do you think that because from your divorce that you were self-sabotaging, you were like, fuck it all, taking it all out on myself, and
yeah,
you're kind of like, especially if you're
Definitely.
drinking like a whole bottle of whiskey, you probably have 2, 3 drinks, you're like, I should stop, but
yeah,
fuck it.
yeah. No, at that point, I just felt so guilty because I was the one that left my ex-wife.
Okay. Oh, I thought she left you. I didn't know that.
No, it took me going to North Korea to
Okay.
to propel me, or that was the spark essentially.
Like I had to go to hell and back. North
Exactly.
Korea. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just having a call with a friend for a couple of hours, and I told him about it. I said, you have two choices in life. You can either take action yourself, or let the world decide for you. And
Yeah.
then, but you don't really want to let the world decide for you because it can manifest in so many different things. Like some people it takes a car crash, some people it takes,
Yeah.
God knows what, right?
I kind of hate that feeling sometimes because I know so many people who are super type A
Yeah.
and they just take the world by the reins and they make it their own kind of thing. And I'm
Yeah.
not that way.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need something to happen to push you, and you're like, okay, now I'm gonna do something. But I wish so much sometimes I could be that person.
Yeah.
And sometimes you think you can fake it till you make it, you can act that way, but you're just like, but it catches up to you.
Exactly.
You're just like, I can't.
Yeah.
This isn't me.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think everyone is like on the search for their own identity. That's what this journey is about, to find out who we are.
Do you think that lasts your entire life?
Yeah. And I think there was one quote by this philosopher, Arthur Schopenhauer, who,
Totally.
when he was asked at the end of his life about, if you reflect back on your life, did you like get what you wanted in life?
Yeah.
And it's like almost the Rolling Stones song. It's like, I never got anything I wanted, but I got everything I needed. And it's like, it's always like that. It's like you're searching for that shiny object, but maybe actually you need something else. So I feel like that's always the chase. So for me, yeah, when I was year 7 of my marriage, I guess we'll talk a little bit about that.
You can talk a lot. I don't.
Well, we have the next pod that's all about marriage, right? But I'll say just a little bit, in the sense that, yeah, things were really good for the first 5 years, and then I felt like she chose work over family.
Okay.
And that was kind of like the beginning of the end. And we kind of stayed together for 2 years. So yeah, one day I just kind of decided to go to North Korea, and as you do, yeah. And it was a complete like shit show of a place, right? Like it's like a movie set, the whole thing. And I did like the marathon, the 10-kilometer run.
Yeah.
Which
In
was
jeans. Yeah. I remember.
in jeans. Yeah. And
In a Lacoste shirt.
yeah, I woke up. I went through my luggage and I'm like, oh shit, I didn't pack shorts or anything because I was super drunk when I packed. So, and a part of me was like, oh, I could buy a pants there, which
Yeah.
they took us to a store. There's no clothes you can buy at all.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I think they had like a fishing jacket, if I can remember. They had certain weird jackets like that at the store.
Did they have like like you go to a store in Banff and it's full of like Canadiana kind of like garbage? It's like a beaver, or it's like those like long
Yeah, everything's
like
Kim Jong-un
underwear
and
with
yeah.
Did they have that kind of thing?
No, it was all like generic. Most of it's made in China because they have that agreement with China, right? So
Okay.
they have like Chinese TVs and Chinese
okay.
washers and dryers and stuff like that. So yeah, one day, I think it was like day 3 or something. I woke up and the hotel is like on an island.
Okay.
It's like Alcatraz essentially, and it's in the middle of the city. And you look outside your hotel door or your hotel window, and you see like all of downtown.
Okay.
And for some reason, I saw like a nuclear bomb drop.
Okay.
And I saw the whole city. I saw like a mushroom cloud go into the city.
You're like, I gotta leave my wife.
Yeah. That was essentially my first thought. So in that moment, I believe like life is too short and I need to get out of this marriage. So that was the kind of one spark. And the second spark was after I returned back to Beijing, I had a call with my dad, real quick call. And he said, look out for yourself for the first time. What do you want? And so I knew that I just had to leave.
Yeah.
So I went to North Korea on the Thursday, came back to Beijing on the Tuesday, told her I wanted a divorce on the Tuesday, looked for an apartment on the Wednesday, and moved into the new apartment on the Thursday. So in 1 week, my whole life changed
Oh yeah.
completely. But I still felt guilty about it. There was still like, it's just so hard, like to leave someone like that. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like you feel like you've destroyed their life, especially because she didn't. We had been working on the marriage for the last 2 years,
Okay.
but it was kind of a surprise to her.
Oh yeah.
It was a shock. And so I had those 2.5 months of just like debauchery. I would, come home, drink, and then meet a new woman like almost every night. And I was living that like playboy lifestyle, essentially, like going to, their apartment, sleeping there, and like just being a complete dick, basically. Hedonistic dick.
Yeah. How do you look back on that?
The what?
How do you look back on that? Are you just like, it
I
had to be
needed to-
done, or are you like, oh, I kind of regret doing it that way?
I think I was just going through some shit and I needed to go through that.
Yeah.
And I knew I needed to get out of that eventually. So that summer I had basically from the job I was working, I had 2 months off in the summer,
Yeah.
2 months in the winter, paid. So I had a pretty good gig at that point.
Yeah.
And so I spent that summer in Nepal because I needed to do a spiritual journey. I needed to find myself again. And I knew I thought hiking could be the way to do it. So I went and I did a hike, my first one, 15 days. My second one, I invited Helen.
Okay.
So she came because I thought maybe
You guys were divorced at that point, or were you just split up?
not legally.
Okay.
We were split. Yeah, definitely. But I thought maybe there's a hope, there's a chance.
Okay.
So she kind of just within a week's notice flew and we went on this hike for 11 days.
So she still wanted it to work.
I think we both did in a
Okay.
way. I think unconsciously I still, because I don't like to give up on shit, I still wanted it to work. But I remember the moment, I think it was maybe day 3 or 4, she was like about to hug me, and I told her like back up, back off, because I didn't.
Back up, bitch. Not
I,
feeling this anymore.
yeah, I felt like a string had been cut.
Okay.
Like that connection between us was gone, and I knew it in that hug attempt that it was done.
Yeah.
And so it was in that moment that we were just friends, and we're still friends. Like we talk maybe once every 6 months or something.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
just a message like, how are you and stuff. But we're not romantically linked anymore, you know? And so there are like breaking points to certain things, but it's just not as simple as like, it's done, there's a long process of
Yeah.
like, so that was painful. Painful experience, but it was definitely part of me finding my identity.
Yeah.
And that's when I stopped really drinking heavily.
Oh, really?
Yeah, during that summer. And I kind of like, that I met Jess when I went back to Beijing and kind of became normal again. So it's just like there are moments when it gets so like chaotic that
Yeah.
I just kind of slip into that darkness,
Yeah.
and I have to like pick myself up and just like rebuild myself.
Yeah.
And I had to do that alone most times. So it's like I know when I'm at that point in that darkness.
Yeah.
And sometimes I know that I just have to go through it. Yeah. I don't. Do you have those moments like you're just in those complete darkness?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Not so much anymore, but yeah, for a long time.
when you're
I had lots of
younger?
those.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when I was like a lot, like, somewhere between 18 and, I don't know, mid 20s, late 20s. Yeah, I had a lot of those.
Like, what's one?
I don't even know. One of my, like, one of the worst times I ever hurt myself, I was like, do you remember I had that girlfriend, Rena?
Sounds familiar.
And anyway, she had come home from like a trip she took, and she had told me that she like made out with this guy there, and I like collapsed basically, and then I beat the
Collapsed.
absolute crap out of myself, like internally.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, what did you feel? Like
I don't know.
betrayed?
Yeah, betrayed, like rage, but like so much more like self-deprecation. Like it was my fault that it happened, that kind of a thing. Yeah.
And
Because like back then, and even for a long period of my life, everything bad that happened, I would say it was my fault. Even if there's absolutely no way it was my fault, I would say it was my fault.
where did you learn that, do you think?
I don't know where I learned it from. I think it was just like it was like something that happened when I was really young. I told the story in like one of our first episodes, but with like when my mom being really mad at me and then saying like, "Oh, I'm just a bad mother, aren't I?" And then me just saying like, "Yep," and
So she blamed herself.
yeah,
So maybe unconsciously you kind of learned that way. So,
maybe, yeah. I don't know where it really comes from, but yeah,
yeah. I think a lot of those habits somehow are like learned like when you're younger. You just kind of pick them up from different people. You're like, oh, they survive this way, so maybe that way worked
yeah,
for them. But a lot of what I kind of learned, I found didn't work in the outside world. So I had to, those tools that worked for other people didn't work for me.
like which tools?
Like avoiding.
Oh yeah,
That's kind of how I grew up in a way, was avoiding.
I think that's how most people deal with almost everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's the easier way, right?
Yeah,
But it's the way that will eat you up later along.
I hate it when you like get in a fight with somebody and then, but you're in the fight, so you can't clear it up right away. You have to like kind of almost let it die down, and then if you want to everything to be okay again, one of you has to break first and be like, I'm sorry. Like,
Yeah.
let's talk this out.
Is that you or?
Oh, I'm always the person who has to initiate. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But is it your fault most time or?
I would say most of the time it's two faults. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So
Because so many times it's like somebody does something wrong and then, we're emotional beings.
yeah,
So you sort of overreact and you take it too far in your reaction. And then when things calm down, you're like, okay, I took it too far. Like, I'm really sorry, but you need to recognize your fault in this as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
It's funny how like the nature of a fight, right?
Yeah.
Like what you said, you don't want it to happen, but when it does happen, you have to like give space to each other.
Yeah.
And within that space, I often blame myself too. I'm just like, why can't we just be friends? Why can't
Yeah.
we be okay? But at the same time, you need to go through those things, right?
Yeah.
I had this long call with a friend of mine who's kind of at a crux in his life. He wants to end a relationship. And I said, like, a relationship that kind of like a divorce or an ending of a relationship is like 1,000 conversations that you never had.
Yeah.
And they kind of add up into one explosion.
Yeah.
So being in a marriage is almost like having those awkward conversations and nipping them in the bud as quickly as you can before they manifest through years of like avoidance and years of like, subtle jabs and anger and stuff. You want to like deal with those things as soon as you can, right?
Yeah.
So that's a hard relationship to have, right? Because then, you have to have those awkward conversations from time to time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, we have those like little fights sometimes about like, okay, we're having a party, right? So we have to clean everything up, but sometimes we overdo it, right? I was raised like a perfectionist, and I think Jess has that too. We're both kind of like perfectionists in that way. So we can just like clean every little thing, and then I just might be like, okay, something will click in, and I'll be like, Jesus, like, can we just relax? Like, no one's gonna care if we dust this thing.
I
Like
will.
right? And so those things, like, we kind of like, we'll talk about those things, be like, hey, just relax. Everything doesn't have to be perfect, and let's just,
Yeah. We are way off topic, but I do want to add one more thing on that thought.
Yeah.
Is I think that when it comes to cleaning, like, I think there needs to be almost like an agreement
Yeah.
of like what's the level of cleaning. And then if some person wants to take it another step, it's like, well, that's your responsibility now.
Yeah.
It's like, you want it this way, you have to do it that way. It's like me obsessing over how the kids' playroom was organized. So I'm like, well, I don't expect you to organize it like this. I'll do it this way because it's
Yeah.
insane.
So the topic is addiction.
Addictions, yeah.
But for me, honestly, I sometimes do get addicted to cleaning. Like I can be like very obsessive with things. So, and it's not healthy.
Yeah.
I just have this obsessive personality where it's like I have to go all in or nothing. As Jess says, it's like I can't just do it half-assed. It
Yeah.
has to be like perfect. And that's like, that is an addiction.
Yeah.
And
Did you ever have any other addictions? Like, were you ever addicted to like video games or
oh
anything
yeah,
like that?
that was probably my first addiction.
Yeah.
When and movies too.
Yeah.
Basically everything. If I'm being honest, there's a fine line between like creativity, mental illness, addiction. There's a lot of crossover there,
Yeah.
So like when I was 12, 13, 14, Chris and I, we played Rainbow Six,
Yep. I think
and
fuck, I might have peed here.
oh yeah.
My leg's like all wet. I'm like,
Oh
what?
no, that we cleaned the pee.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah. I was addicted to cleaning
Yeah,
it. So, yeah.
okay.
I forgot to tell you. Yeah. So yeah, we played this game called Rainbow Six.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
That was I was obsessed with that. So
Yeah.
for me, it's like when I start choosing the game over homework, over like sports,
Yeah.
and it like consumes my life.
Yeah.
That's when it become a problem, right? But I would hide it so well. I would just tell my parents, I'm doing homework downstairs. And I would just be gaming, right? But I did learn something from that early on, and I'm glad I did, which with games, and it's why I don't like get so obsessed with games now, is that it's like hitting the reset button. It's like all the work that you did is just gone. All of that grinding,
Yeah.
it's like it's not saved anywhere for long term, right? Like
Yeah.
I can't go right now and load my games from when I was 12, 13,
Yeah.
right? It's just an ephemeral experience, and all of that hard work is gone. And it's like you don't have anything to show for it. And I learned that very young. So I don't get like really caught up in gaming anymore. I did start playing games later on when I was doing the game job.
Yeah.
I had like 20 years of games that I had to play and learn again.
Okay, yeah.
So it was more for like education and more to like learn about storytelling in games and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I really let it, like, I'm aware of when I am addicted to them. And yeah, I'm glad I'm not. But movies were basically my crutch for years as well. I was definitely addicted to watching movies. And I think there was a fine line between learning and just escaping, because movies are like the perfect vehicle to escape.
Yeah.
Right? You're in this whole other world for sometimes hours and hours. And that's scary, right? Because
I remember we went on a road trip, you, me, and Kevin. I think we were going to Vancouver, and you were watching like an 8-hour Russian movie on your laptop. I was just like, good Lord.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that was my obsession, definitely. And as from like the age of 11, when I actually started watching movies seriously, when I remember, to like 20 was probably my Hollywood years, where I would watch everything Hollywood related. And then when I went to Montreal was when I started watching more international stuff. So it's like, okay, move the addiction from North America to the world,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, okay, now I have to watch everything from every country now. And like, that's like so consuming. And I think that's what an addiction is. It consumes you,
Yeah.
right? But sometimes I just don't know any other way. Like, that search for like knowledge and that search to be better is sometimes like compulsive for me.
I do feel like almost everybody has an addiction. It's just some are healthy and some are not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some can have relationships instead of watching 8-hour Russian movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember at one point I was really addicted to one of the NHL games. And I was working up north at the time. So I had a lot more money to spend frivolously, and you could buy like packs, and the pack was like $6 or something. You got so many players,
Yeah.
and I was always just trying to make my team better. But it's like if you bought 5 packs, you got one for free. So I'd be like, oh, I'll just spend $20. And I'd be like, 40. Okay, I've spent $100 today on NHL packs.
Yeah.
This is insane.
Yeah.
And then eventually one of the games came out, and I was like, I'm not even buying it. Like I have to stop this. This is crazy.
Yeah. So how much did you end up spending total?
Oh, it's probably, it'll be over a few years that they had those packs, I think. So it's, I don't know, maybe like 400, $500. I don't know, like in
Yeah.
total.
Well,
But it'd be like, lots of times it'd just be like, you know, $20 here, $20 there.
yeah, it always starts.
But then
that
there'd
way.
be the days that they'd, you know, the pack would be on sale and be like, I'm going to buy so many of these things. And it was just like, it was nonsense because you'd have every single player on your team is like a superstar and it'd make no difference anyways.
Exactly. Was it EA? Please tell
Yeah, it
me.
was
Yes,
EA,
it
yeah.
was EA.
Yeah.
Because I got caught up. Right when COVID started in January, there was lurkings that there's this virus and stuff. And I remember,
Oh, like with the Sony one, like the Sony hack? You talking about that or?
no, I'm talking about COVID, like
Yeah,
January,
I know. Yeah.
January 2020.
Okay, anyways.
Yeah,
Oh, I thought you meant like a computer virus, not the virus. Right. Yes. Right.
Yeah. So there was kind of like lurkings that there's this virus and Jess's parents were visiting.
Okay.
So we were kind of like scared and worried. So I had like a week off during that time or 10 days or something for Chinese New Year. And instead of like doing things like living and stuff, I got into Madden and with those packs.
Oh, yeah.
Probably 3 or 4 weeks, I spent 1,000.
Oh, yeah.
And when COVID started, then I just deleted. I was like, I can't do this. Like, and like what you said, it doesn't make a fucking difference.
No, it doesn't.
With your gameplay. It's just like you see a little, like some more completed passes or whatever. Or
There's always some player who's better than you. And they're
Yeah.
just like, yeah.
that's the moment EA went evil, is when they started to like introduce those packs, right?
Yeah.
And it's still like a thing, right? And
Yeah,
that
I'm
was
sure.
that wasn't their model for years. Their model was you buy the damn cartridge or CD or whatever, and then
That's the game.
that's the game.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, okay,
Well, what if you can trade? Or what if you can play people online?
yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh, what if everybody online actually cheats? So now you have to,
Yeah.
like, oh,
Can I interject?
yeah,
So with those packs, a lot of what EA does is they give the streamers access to all the best packs. So they show them opening all these packs, like, oh, I got Gretzky or I got
Yeah.
Brady or whatever. And then everybody's like, oh, I want to go get these guys. And they open thousands of packs and they can't get these guys.
yeah.
So yes, EA is evil. That's all I want.
That's the scam, right?
That's the scam.
It's like with Drake and Steak. Do you know about that? He's just like, there's probably an Instagram that he bet like $500,000 on Kansas City, right?
okay.
Even though he's not actually spending that money.
Yeah.
It's just all a show, right? So then people go, oh yeah, Drake bet. And then so I have to bet too, right?
I'm so happy I never got addicted to like gambling or
Yeah.
like anytime I went into a casino, it's like, I don't get it. I don't understand it. Like,
but EA, that is like they brought gambling with gaming, right?
that's true.
That's the evil part of like
Yeah.
they combine those tactics. And the company I used to work for is exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And
Or it's like all those games on your phone, and you can do so much until it's just like, oh, but if you spend $5,
Yeah.
the game gets so much better and all this. And,
yeah, and they can make like you can grind your way through it, but they make it as if it's like almost impossible.
so many of them have like some sort of, you have to build something.
Yeah.
And eventually it gets to a point, it's like, oh, this is going to take 10 hours to build, or you can buy it for $1.
Yeah,
You're like,
exactly.
oh.
Yeah, that's the thing is they hack you with the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Should I wait 24 hours or
Yeah.
get it now? That instant gratification. And I think that's part of like how the society has really changed. Like they really like are more aggressive in those tactics now.
Oh, big time. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, they literally, I don't know when they started, but they literally started hiring like psychologists and stuff to figure out what's the best way we can make this the most addictive thing.
Exactly.
It's Instagram, right? And
Yeah.
then the like button, like you said,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I mean those leaked documents from the
Yeah.
they hired all the best psychologists they know how the mind works,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, keeping us pissed off and aggravated, I guess, is the best way. So it's almost like the economy is all about eyeballs, right? Your attention is the profit, right?
I mean, yeah, that's how like the stock market has always worked. So much of it it's BS, honestly. It's made up. But if
Yeah.
your eyes are on something, oh, that stock goes up.
Yeah. Oh, I know someone in China who they do all the stock stuff. They're totally addicted to all of that.
Oh, I'm sure. I bet you it would be
And
it would be all consuming.
yeah, and you're just in a dark room for like because you're on that high, right?
Yeah.
So you're in there like 16, 18 hours. And he told me there's also like in that world, it's like everyone's a psychopath,
Yeah.
basically. Like that's the consuming.
It would be the adrenaline.
Yeah.
And like I remember reading this article about police officers and how so many of them have messed up home lives. And the reason is because you get on the job and you get this big adrenaline dump and it kind of lasts your whole shift. So then you go home and this is when you're coming down and so you're kind of angry.
Yeah.
And so then you become more addicted to the job. And yeah, and it can have serious effects anyways. That's what I mean, like I'm pretty sure police have like a 50% divorce rate or something. And
Yeah.
that's probably why.
Yeah. It's this life can consume you, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard. It's so what's the better way then? Is just to, because for me, I start thinking a lot of people build their career off their wounds rather than their values. In the sense that from their wounds, they need validation from society. They need validation from someone to tell them they're good or tell them, you're talented or whatever.
Okay, yeah.
And I don't think that ever breeds happiness because the goalposts are always moving forward from you. It's always the next thing. Like if I have this one thing, then I'll be happy.
Yeah.
But that thing never comes, right?
Yeah.
So it's just you got to build off your own belief system, your career, I think, because that's where you'll find, eternal happiness or whatever. At least that's what I've been thinking a lot. Thinking about a lot.
I was like, that was pretty philosophical for me, but I like it.
Yeah. No, because it's like there's so many movies about that. Like There Will Be Blood is like, what's the limit of your ambition?
I'm pretty sure that movie's about milkshakes.
Oh, yeah. And bowling.
Prove me wrong, yeah.
Yeah. It's like you end up with everything, but you're alone. Or
Oh, for sure,
yeah,
yeah.
or like the social network. It's like you invent a platform where there's a billion friends, but you're alone. You have no one.
Well, what's that saying? Comparison is the thief of joy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to do is because I used to believe that. The thing is like I was telling my friend like I wanted to come back to Calgary like a hero almost. Like Michael Corleone in The Godfather comes back a war hero. And I thought like because I had this unrealistic standard that I had to win an Academy Award by 35.
Okay.
That was my goal. But the Netflix show came out when I was 35. So I think that was life laughing at me. Like, you don't need this validation bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, you need to find it within yourself. And that's why I came back home, because I had dealt with all that stuff. If I hadn't dealt with it, I would still be in China. So it was all about timing.
Yeah.
So I think just deal with it, and then those addictions won't have that like
That hold on you.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that foundation.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
build it on something you believe in rather than what you
Something
think
positive instead of
Yeah.
something that consumes you.
that fills that hole.
Yeah.
Because everyone has that hole, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that concludes our time for today.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
was a good conversation
Yeah, that's a good one.
about addiction.
Yep.
Yeah.
sort of, and marriage or some other stuff in there.
Yeah,
Hiking, I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
No
All right.
chicks.
Join us
Yeah.
next episode.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Yeah. See you.